It was just supposed to be a game, a playful experiment to bring excitement back into our marriage. No feelings. No consequences. Just one night. But now, I can't stop thinking about her. And the worst part? I don't think my wife can stop thinking about him either. Before we begin, I want to appreciate my subscribes and new subscribers for more gripping, dramatic stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications. So, let's dive in. Marriage changes in a ways no one warns you about. The early years are full of passion, late-night conversations, and stolen kisses in grocery store aisles. Then, without realizing it, routines take over. Love doesn't disappear, but the fire dims, replaced by comfort, or worse, complacency. Rosalie and I had been together for 8 years, and somewhere along the way, excitement turned into predictability. We still cared for each other, but the thrill that once kept us up at night had faded. Then came Ryan and Tessa. The night we met them at a friend's party felt like any other social event, until the drinks started flowing, and the conversation took an unexpected turn. Ryan, confident and charismatic, leaned in with a smirk. "Ever thought about shaking things up?" Rosalie raised an eyebrow. "How do you mean?" Tessa, with her piercing green eyes and effortless charm, swirled her wine glass before answering. "A little adventure. A little exchange." The air in the room shifted. It took a second to register what she meant, but when it did, the weight of the suggestion settled deep in my chest. Rosalie laughed, though there was an edge to it. "That's bold." Ryan chuckled. "It's just one night. No strings, no jealousy. Just a way to bring something new to the table." The idea should have been dismissed immediately. But it wasn't. Not by me. And definitely not by Rosalie. That night, as we lay in bed, either of us could pretend the idea hadn't sunk its teeth into us. By morning, curiosity had turned into a conversation. By evening, conversation had turned into a decision. And soon enough, we were walking into something we could never undo. The hotel room smelled of expensive cologne and red wine. Dim lighting cast soft shadows against the walls, and the tension in the air was suffocating. We had agreed, one night, no strings attached. Just an experiment to explore, without consequences. That's what we told ourselves. That's what we wanted to believe. Ryan had taken Rosalie to another room down the hall. I didn't know how to feel about that. The thought of my wife with another man, even in a situation I had consented to, gnawed at the edges of my mind. But there was no turning back now. Tessa stood in front of me. Her silk dress clung to her curves, the deep red fabric almost taunting me. She held a wine glass delicately in her hand, swirling the liquid slowly, her painted lips slightly parted. When she stepped closer, I caught the scent of something floral, intoxicating. "Do you feel nervous?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to hold her gaze. "A little." Tessa smirked, stepping even closer. "Good. It makes this more exciting." Everything about her was different from Rosalie. Rosalie was gentle, cautious, hesitant. Tessa was the opposite, bold, confident, knowing. She set her glass down on the nightstand and reached out, tracing her fingers lightly along my arm. A shiver ran through me at the simple touch. "You can still stop," she whispered. "We both can." But we didn't. Her hand slid up my chest, slow and deliberate, testing the waters. My pulse quickened, my breath came heavier. The first kiss was hesitant, careful, testing the boundaries of morality. The second kiss? That was the moment everything changed. Because that kiss wasn't careful. It was hungry. Her lips pressed against mine, urgent and demanding. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer before I could even process what I was doing. There was no hesitation now. No second thoughts. The weight of guilt, the image of Rosalie in another room, it all faded as Tessa's fingers tangled in my hair, her body pressing against mine. The tension that had been simmering between us since the moment we agreed to this ignited like gasoline meeting a flame. She whispered my name against my lips, her voice full of something both dangerous and exhilarating. And then we crossed the line. The sheets were tangled. My skin burned from the heat of our bodies, and Tassa's fingers lazily traced patterns on my chest. I should have felt guilty, but all I felt was adrenaline. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was charged. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Did that feel like just a game to you? I hesitated, because we both knew the answer. But before I could speak, my phone vibrated on the nightstand. A message from Rosalie. We need to talk. The morning after was supposed to feel normal. A return to routine. A quiet slip back into our respective lives, pretending last night never happened. But as I sat across from Rosalie at the breakfast table, I could feel the weight of something unspoken pressing between us. She sipped her coffee without meeting my eyes. Normally, she'd be scrolling through her phone, humming softly, or making a comment about her day ahead. But today, she was distant, distracted. I wanted to believe it was just my own guilt projecting something onto her. But deep down, I knew better. Because I was guilty. Terribly, inescapably guilty. My mind kept replaying the night with Tassa, the feel of her body, the way she whispered my name, the hunger in her kiss. It had started as an experiment, a reckless test of boundaries. But what we'd done wasn't just playing a game. It wasn't harmless anymore. It was dangerous. And I wasn't the only one who knew it. Rosalie finally spoke, her voice light but forced. Did you have fun last night? I nearly choked on my coffee. She said it so casually, but there was something behind it, something I couldn't quite place. Yeah, I said, swallowing hard. You. She paused for a second, then smiled. Too quickly, too effortlessly. Yeah. It was interesting. That word. Interesting. I didn't like it. Her expression gave away nothing, but I noticed the way she avoided looking directly at me. My stomach twisted. I wanted to ask her outright, did you feel something? Did you like it too much? Did you want him? But how could I ask that without exposing my own guilt? So I let it go. Or at least I tried to. The problem with crossing a line is that once you do, it's hard to stop thinking about what's on the other side. I tried to focus on work, on meetings, on deadlines, but my mind kept drifting back to Tassa. I found myself checking my phone more than usual, wondering if she'd text, waiting for it. By the afternoon, I couldn't resist. I sent her a simple message. Hey. You okay? She read it almost immediately. A few minutes passed before she replied. Tassa, I don't know. You. I hesitated before typing back. Not really. I didn't expect her to call, but she did. I answered on the first ring. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. Max, what the hell did we do? I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I don't know. Silence. Then, softly, I can't stop thinking about you. My heart slammed against my ribs. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. Me neither. Another silence, but this time it was charged. Heavy with things we shouldn't say. Then she whispered, I want to see you. And just like that, the game was over. We met in a hotel room that night. No excuses. No pretending it was part of the experiment. This wasn't a swap anymore. This was an affair. The second we were alone, Tassa crashed into me, her lips urgent, her hands desperate. There was no hesitation, no guilt, not in that moment. Only raw, undeniable need. Clothes hit the floor. Hands roamed. I devoured her, losing myself in everything we weren't supposed to be. But after it was over, as we lay tangled in the sheets, reality began to sink in. Tassa turned to me, her expression unreadable. What now? I didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, I didn't want to stop. And the worst part? I didn't think Rosalie wanted to either. When I got home that night, Rosalie was already in bed. She didn't say anything as I slipped in beside her. She smelled different. Not her usual perfume. something masculine. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, that my own guilt was making me paranoid. But when she finally spoke, her voice was too calm. You came home late. I swallowed hard. Work ran late. A pause. Then, liar. I went still. I turned to her, but she didn't look at me. She just stared at the ceiling, her expression detached. I could ask you the same thing, I said quietly. Where were you? A long silence. Then she finally turned to me, eyes unreadable. Work ran late. The exact same lie? And just like that I knew. She wasn't innocent either. The experiment had become something much, much more dangerous. And we were both about to find out just how far it would go. The space between us had never felt this vast. Rosalie and I had always been close, even in the moments when life got busy. When routine dulled the edges of our marriage, we'd still felt like partners. But now, lying next to her in the dark, all I could feel was the distance. And worse, I knew why. She wasn't mine anymore. Not entirely. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. My body still carried the weight of my own betrayal, the way Tassa's skin had felt beneath my hands just hours ago. But what haunted me more was the quiet, almost indifferent way Rosalie had called me a liar. Like she already knew. Like she didn't even care. I turned my head slightly, watching her in the dim glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains. She was awake. Still. Her breathing too even, too controlled. Something inside me snapped. Did you sleep with him? My voice came out hoarse. Rosalie didn't flinch. She just exhaled slowly, still staring at the ceiling. Then, after a long pause, does it matter? My chest tightened. Yes. Finally, she turned to look at me. And when she did, I saw it. That flicker of guilt. That unmistakable truth. Yes, she whispered. A sharp, suffocating silence filled the room. I clenched my jaw, fighting the surge of emotions crashing over me. I wanted to be angry. I should have been furious. But how could I be when I was just as guilty? Rosalie searched my face, waiting for my reaction. Maybe waiting for me to judge her. But how could I, when just hours ago, I'd been wrapped around another woman, whispering the exact same lies? I swallowed hard. Did you want it? Her lips parted slightly, as if she wasn't expecting the question. Her throat bobbed, and I watched the conflict flash across her face. I don't know, she admitted. At first, it was just part of the game. But then, she stopped herself. But then, it wasn't. I closed my eyes, a sick feeling twisting in my stomach. We had broken something, and there was no way to put it back together. The next few days passed in a suffocating haze. We went through the motions of our routine, woke up, had breakfast, pretended we weren't falling apart. But the silence between us was no longer comfortable. It was tense. Rosalie avoided my eyes, and I found myself avoiding hers too. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was Ryan. His hands on her body. His lips on her skin. And the worst part? She let him. Just like I had let Tassa. At work, I was useless. My mind was a constant storm of guilt and twisted desire. I told myself I needed to stop. That I needed to cut Tassa off before this got even more out of control. But when she texted me that night, my resolve crumbled. Tassa, I can't stop thinking about you. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I should have ignored it. I should have ended this. Instead, I typed back. Meet me tonight. And just like that, I threw gasoline on an already raging fire. We met at the same hotel. This time, there was no hesitation. No guilt. Only fire. Tassa pulled me inside before I could even shut the door, her lips crushing against mine. I didn't resist. I didn't want to. There was something different this time, something darker. It wasn't just about the thrill anymore. It was about forgetting. Forgetting Rosalie. Forgetting what she had done. Forgetting that this would destroy everything. Tassa's nails raked down my back as she moaned my name, her body arching into mine. Every touch, every kiss, every movement felt reckless. Like we were trying to burn away the consequences with pleasure. But the fire only grew hotter. And it was only a matter of time before we got burned. I didn't come home until late. Again. This time, Rosalie was waiting. She was sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't look surprised to see me walk in at midnight. She didn't ask where I had been. She already knew. I stood frozen in the doorway, heart hammering. "You're still up." She took a slow sip of her wine, her gaze steady. "So are you." The tension was suffocating. Then, calmly, she said, "I know you've been seeing her." I went still. A slow smirk tugged at the corner of her lips. "You didn't think I'd notice?" She tilted her head. "Or did you just not care?" I swallowed hard, my hands clenching at my sides. "Rosalie." But she cut me off. "It's funny," she mused. "We started this because we thought it would bring us closer. Make things exciting again." She let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Now look at us." She set her glass down, rising to her feet. For the first time, she looked utterly unreadable. And that scared me more than anything. "What are we doing, Max?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. Because, for the first time, I realized I wasn't sure if we could stop. And I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. The truth always finds a way to crawl out of the darkness. For weeks, Rosalie and I had been dancing around it, pretending we could keep living in this twisted new reality. That we could still be us, despite what we'd done. But now, standing in our kitchen under the dim glow of the overhead lights, there was no more pretending. We had ruined everything. And we both knew it. Rosalie's stare cut through me like a blade, her expression unreadable. "Are you still seeing her?" Lying would have been pointless. "Yes." A flicker of something crossed her face, pain, maybe. Or maybe she had stopped feeling anything at all. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "I don't even know why I asked." My pulse pounded. "Are you still seeing Ryan?" Silence. She didn't answer. And that told me everything. My jaw clenched, but I had no right to be angry. We were both guilty. Both drowning in the choices we made. And now, the only thing left was the wreckage. The next morning, Rosalie was gone before I woke up. No note. No explanation. Just an empty space beside me in bed. Panic clawed at my chest. Was she leaving me? Was this it? I grabbed my phone, hands shaking as I texted her. "Me, where are you?" Minutes passed. Then, Rosalie, with Ryan. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She wanted me to know. The realization sent a surge of something ugly through me. Anger. Jealousy. Possession. I wasn't ready to let her go. I wasn't ready for her to choose him. I dialed Tassa's number. I needed to forget. Tassa met me at the hotel. This time, it wasn't about lust. It wasn't about thrill. It was about revenge. She must have sensed it, because as soon as I walked in, she murmured, "What happened?" I didn't answer. I just pulled her close, crashing my lips against hers. I needed this. I needed to lose myself in her. To make Rosalie feel as miserable as I did. But as I buried myself in Tassa's warmth, something gnawed at the edges of my mind. Did Rosalie feel this way when she was with Ryan? Did she kiss him the way I was kissing Tassa? Did she whisper his name in the dark? The thought made me sick. But I still didn't stop. That night, when I returned home, Rosalie was waiting. She was sitting on the couch, her face unreadable. "We need to talk." I sat across from her, heart pounding. "About what?" She gave a small, bitter smile. "About this game we started." My stomach twisted. Rosalie took a deep breath. "I thought it would be harmless. That we could separate fun from feelings." Her voice grew quieter. But I can't do this anymore. A lump formed in my throat. So what are you saying? She met my eyes. And in that moment I knew. We can't come back from this, Max. My chest caved. This was it. We had pushed too far, crossed too many lines. And now, we were watching our marriage fall apart in real time. I wanted to tell her I still loved her. That we could fix this. But deep down, we both knew the truth. Some things, once broken, could never be put back together. The next day, Rosalie packed a bag. She didn't make a scene. Didn't scream or cry. She just kissed me on the cheek, whispered, "I'm sorry," and walked out the door. I didn't stop her. Because what was left to say? I had already lost her. And worse, I had lost myself. It's been 6 months. Rosalie and I signed the divorce papers last week. I still wake up in the middle of the night reaching for her. But she's not there. And she never will be again. Tessa called me a few times after everything ended, but I never picked up. Because in the end, none of this was worth it. I thought swapping partners would bring excitement. I thought it would reignite something in me. But all it did was destroy the only thing that ever really mattered. I lost my wife. And now, all I have left are the memories of how I let it happen. That's the end.